So what do you think the trigger is for people who go, right, we've had enough spreadsheets?
Very specific job of switching from a spreadsheet-based
Yeah.
system to a proper CRM like
Yeah.
HubSpot or others.
It's almost a start with the end in mind type of approach there. So
Yeah.
start with the process, not the data.
Just ask yourself, who owns the data at the moment? If you don't have a CRM, who owns your customers?
Yeah.
Is it the salespeople?
I actually think it takes more discipline to maintain a spreadsheet than it does to maintain a CRM, to be honest, because there's so many things that can go wrong.
My management lessons from the cat have continued.
Oh my goodness.
I can't remember where we got to. I think he brought in a dead mouse. I told him to stop bringing dead mice, so he brought in a chick.
And the bat.
And then a bat.
Yeah.
So I said, stop bringing in dead animals. So this week he brought in a live mouse. So I said, oh no, don't bring in a live mouse. So he dropped it and the mouse ran off in my bedroom.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know where it is now. My good lady wife isn't entirely happy with the idea that a mouse has been brought into the house and let loose in our bedroom. I can't imagine why.
Time to get rid of the cat.
I think the cat might be on the way out anyway. He's quite old. But not too old to catch bats from midair and bring in mice. How does he carry mice without killing it anyway?
Sprightly,
So, yes, there you go. Be careful what you instruct. I'm
sure this cat is
listening
understanding
to every word.
Yeah.
And finding ways around my instructions to further bring me trophies that meet the new rules. Anyway, how's
very macabre.
How's the honey from the hive coming on?
Honey from the hive. Well, I actually used the honey from the hive the day to make some flapjacks.
Ah, nice.
And I'm more,
Not your own hive yet.
not my own hive yet.
Still haven't got permission to have
No,
your own hive.
not yet. But I did make some I'm on a bit of a mission at the moment. I've got quite a few side quests going on. And one is to reduce almost entirely the amount of processed food that the Buckle household consumes.
UPS.
So we are going back from scratch on a lot of this stuff.
Right.
And what I realised was actually making some rather nice flapjacks with organic oats and honey, maple syrup, raisins, etc., usual stuff. Actually cost the same when I priced out the ingredients as buying kind of 4 packs of, processed chocolate bar, whatever, insert your preferred brand here.
Yeah.
Even when they're on special offer.
Really?
So it's about £6 would be when they're on special offer from one of the supermarkets.
And that's what you spent in ingredients.
That's what I spent in ingredients to make something that's far more nutritious, tasty, and you know what's gone into
the
it.
satisfaction of having made it yourself.
Well, it took 10 minutes. It's not easy.
Yeah.
So
I've got a very good recipe for homemade granola, which I must admit I keep falling out of the habit of making because it's so easy to buy it. But when you know what's gone in it.
Exactly. So back to first principles on a lot of this stuff. I've got to say, feel a lot better for it. You feel a lot better for it. Not only the satisfaction, but
yeah. Is it easy to say you're actually healthier because of it, or you just
know,
feel
I've
you
not
should
done
be?
any measurements, but it's just general kind of
you feel worthy.
You feel like actually this is how we're supposed to eat.
Yeah, it is.
And then I know, this is something, right? So I went to another supermarket, which will remain unnamed.
The lawyers have obviously been coaching you.
Protect the guilty. And they had a chicken drumstick, but it wasn't a chicken drumstick. It was a chocolate dessert. So imagine, but it looked like a chicken drumstick, right? So chicken drumstick shape, but it was made of chocolate and covered in some sort of chocolate crunch or something with a vanilla goo centre.
Made to look like a chicken drumstick.
I know. And I took a photo of it and I sat there and I just thought to myself, somewhere in a room, someone who's hopefully reasonably intelligent has had a conversation to say, I know what the world needs. It needs a chicken drumstick dessert that's made of chocolate with a creamy centre.
Was it part of a range? I mean, this is madness.
They had a vanilla and a chocolate one. There's 2 of them, but it was just ridiculous.
That is ridiculous.
I just thought, why are we wasting?
Maybe a new feature on our podcast is the name and shame the stupid products.
Stupid product, the rant, the health food rant.
It's a chocolate teapot slot.
That's why people have come here.
They want to know what we're
for stories about
this
cats and flapjacks.
And honey from the hive. We're all looking forward to when you finally break through and at least do the course, even if you've got to put the hive on someone else's land.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
That's a possibility. I think people do that, don't they?
Yeah, you could do that. I can go volunteer.
I did have friends who used to have a hive at the bottom of their long garden, so I could get some advice for you and find out why they don't any longer.
Well, I saw someone who got stung by a bee, and apparently if you get stung by a bee and you flick it off or whatever, it kind of leaves the stinger in and it will rip the abdomen out and etc.
Well, it kills the bee.
Sort of thing your cat would probably find interesting. But if you let the bee unwind itself, it will unwind its stinger out of your hand and then just fly off.
But you have still been stung.
You have still been stung. You have still been stung, but you've got to.
He doesn't like to leave an apology.
You got to
pack it around to history.
You got to tough it out as it goes, as it unwinds itself.
In the interest of saving the bee.
Yeah.
Right.
So
that takes a little bit of self-control and thinking about.
Exactly. Act of the day.
It's very Buddhist. Don't want to harm any living thing.
No, my immediate reaction would probably be to
swat the thing and you kill the bee and probably squeezed more poison into your hand. Right, anyway, enough of that.
That's not why people have come here.
That's not why people have come here. I'm not sure why people have come here. But on the basis they might want to hear something about business, we should perhaps do a podcast on that. All right, then. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the SME Growth Podcast from Wellmeadow, where, as you know by now if you're a regular listener, we try to come up with something useful or interesting, or sometimes both, for owners and managers of small and medium-sized businesses. And it's Rich and me, as usual, the usual stars of the show.
I'm not sure about that. But
it's nice to think that somewhere out there are thousands more than we realise actually watching this. Doesn't show up on the stats all the time.
I live in hope. Yeah.
So we're up to episode 176. Nothing exciting about that.
No.
I don't think. So 176, how did we get to here? What were our last three episodes?
173 was about loneliness at the top. Kind of how a lot of business owners are lonely, but not so much in the social sense, but in the kind of isolation of decision making. And
it was the negative impacts on the business as opposed to the negative impacts on the owner, on the lonely person.
Yeah.
That was
173.
Yeah.
174 was the wisdom economy, and how actually that's going to come more to the fore as AI makes knowledge ubiquitous. Wisdom becomes more valuable.
So older people don't get thrown on the scrap heap quite as quickly as they used to because they have some wisdom.
Because they've got some wisdom to do.
Which they always had, of course, but it sounds like it was being more valued now.
Yeah, I think
you've got to combat the non-wisdom of AI.
Yeah, I think it's almost the paradox, or the antidote to increasing amounts of knowledge so quickly is maybe the slow road, the scenic route of the wise old sage.
Is this like vinyl comeback?
Yeah, I think so. And you see a lot of people now with the old cine cameras. I'm sure they're digital inside, but they look like the old kind of cine thing.
I've not seen that, but that sounds cool.
I was watching
wet film cameras. I've seen some. I was on holiday recently with a 22-year-old, and he had an old Olympus Trip 35, and I remember those from back in the 80s. Probably even older.
Bit of wet film.
Yeah. Anyway, yes, go on. So that was
174, wisdom, and 175, AI versus your terms and conditions. So we're talking about how take a look at terms and conditions, but also how AI is making sort of changing the paradigm a little bit for SMEs to be able to review contracts.
That was quite an interesting experience, wasn't it? There were two
quickly
in a week that popped up in our experience.
Yeah, we've had quite a few.
It levels the playing field. It's almost AI versus the lawyers, and see where you still need the lawyer, which you do sometimes, but also don't just take these things as read and challenge them, and use AI as a helper. Yeah. So not a tool, but a teammate. Good. Okay, so that brings us to today, episode 176, and we thought we'd return to something vaguely CRM related for this one because we've dip in and out of that as a topic, don't we, on our various journeys across our meanderings and choices of subjects. And this one is for people who are maybe still using spreadsheets. Well, you could say that about the whole of their business, right? Because a lot of people use spreadsheets for all sorts, and we used to have a phase of our life in the past where we used to try and phase those out across all sorts of things. But I'm thinking more here around that whole sales process marketing front end, which we might loosely call CRM, but in spreadsheet form. And we're still seeing it. And sometimes they're not even yet in spreadsheets. They're still in the phone contacts list and the personal emails of the individual employees. So it's had to move from a spreadsheet-oriented sales and marketing process to something that you might be proud of as a CRM.
Yeah.
Maybe a HubSpot CRM, given our personal experience and flavour on that.
Yeah, and I think I was saying there's nothing intrinsically wrong with spreadsheets. We've been big users and advocates of spreadsheets. I'm not sure advocates is the right word, but big users of spreadsheets.
We certainly were.
We still use spreadsheets for various things,
including in the days before we were involved in HubSpot for our prospect management and lead management.
Yeah. But there are limitations to them?
Yeah, they're a good start, but I don't think they necessarily scale that well. I think if you're a one-man band, then you could have a list in the back of your diary, couldn't you, really? It's the version of that. But as soon as you grow as the team a bit, especially the front customer prospect-facing team.
I think it's as well as that, but also as soon as you start treating things like a process and you want to put notes on and your activity dates, and what tends to happen is data gets overwritten.
I saw this exactly at a client that should know better, but they know who they are. Earlier this year, they were using a version of a kind of a CRM function within another piece of software. It wasn't really CRM software. It was more to do with managing their main part of their business. And it had this thing, an area called CRM. But you're right, it didn't log successive comments or activities. You had to overwrite the previous one. So you either only had the last comment, or you had a very long text field where someone was adding a new line. You had to scroll to the bottom or scroll to the top. So that's not great.
I actually think it takes more discipline to maintain a spreadsheet than it does to maintain a CRM, to be honest, because there's so many things that can go wrong. People start to some people like doing a colour code system on it, which no one else does, and then
I went down to London a couple of months ago, and I think that the MD had asked me to go in to speak to one of the directors about maybe putting in HubSpot as a CRM, and they were passionate about their spreadsheet, and it's because of the colours, and it was a very creative industry. So you can see why they were more worried about whether the colours were the right choice for who's a hot prospect or not, rather than all of the system implications of using a spreadsheet.
Well, top tip as well on this, if you do want to persist with your spreadsheet and use colours, you can use a bit of VBA to find the colour of the cell.
Yes, you
and
can.
then do something with it, can't you?
You could do. Yeah.
You
can sort and filter by colours. But anyway, we're not here to promote the use of spreadsheets. What we're saying is, okay, they have a place, but they're very much the beginner version, and don't try and grow up your company still using beginner tools. So you have a few problems, don't you, like managing duplicates, and if different people have got their own spreadsheets, then you're not going to do it at all. At least if you have one spreadsheet, it's a start, you could do it, but it's a manual job to find them. And then making sure that you know who's the owner of all the data and who's responsible for changing it, because you can't track changes that easily in there. And someone deleting it, you can't necessarily undo that once it's immediately passed. What the next action is, all those sorts of things. The spreadsheets aren't really designed to do a lot of what CRM does. They're just a static bucket of data.
They're more designed for analysis, aren't they, than activity.
Yeah.
Would probably be my summary of that. Whereas a CRM is much more focused around how do we drive the next step.
Yeah.
Spreadsheets more about how do we get some understanding out of the data that we've got as a tool. So,
and it's probably more likely to be a list. You get lists of either customers or prospects or maybe emails you sent out perhaps, but they don't often get used to manage a pipeline, which is really what a CRM moves on to doing for you, isn't it? So it's more of a glorified address book, which is fine. You need that somehow, but you could put that into all sorts of things.
Well, and years ago we used to do a lot of pipeline management. You remember we had all the data in there, but it takes an awful lot of spreadsheet kind of jiggery-pokery to get all the numbers to work as a pipeline funnel, conversion rates, etc. It takes a lot of updating. It goes wrong very easily when someone deletes a cell or cuts a row out improperly and all that type of thing. So,
and given that there's so much almost free stuff online that does this for you as a proper CRM, even HubSpot Starter was that 14 quid a month or something per person. That surely if you're not going to spend 14 quid a month, you're paying that on your Microsoft license anyway. So it's so easy now to do it quote unquote properly, even without all the bells and whistles.
So what do you think the trigger is for people who go, right, we've had enough spreadsheets?
Something probably goes wrong, or someone leaves. I think that's a problem. So either they delete a bunch of data, or they get two copies that are conflicting, and someone's created a copy and updated. I think that happens. I don't think it's just that, we're losing track, it's too busy. I think it's probably that thing about the pipeline that we've got these lists of things, but who's where, and what's our conversion rates, and how many, what's the forecast, and what's the weighted average, what's this, all the questions that you start asking about it, the reporting on the back of it. You can spend a long time building all that custom stuff you talked about.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just someone thinking, this isn't, we're big enough, we're too big for this. This is a bit backward, isn't it?
Well, I think as well, when you see a lot of the other functionality that's built into a CRM like HubSpot, you're getting so much more. It's greater than the sum of its parts, really. So not only you're storing the data in the same way that you would store it in a spreadsheet, albeit in a database.
It's just a database, yeah.
But you're also then getting, because it's a database, a lot more of that kind of relational, so contacts and companies and deals, et cetera, but also all the activity tracking that we mentioned before, integration into things like Outlook and all of those other benefits that you're getting.
Yeah, clever stuff.
Which you don't really get.
Monitoring who's been on your website down at contact level.
Without having...
Imagine if you did that in a spreadsheet and you were trying to log... Well, for a start, you couldn't technically do it and work out which people had been on your website because it can't name them.
Yeah.
You need a tool like HubSpot or something to do that, to label the cookies. But let's say you wanted to try and track who's opened all your emails and you're sending them out through MailChimp or something. You're going to have to bring that... You're going to have to export it from MailChimp every time you've done a mail run, bring that into your spreadsheet, update what you did before.
I think it's almost a little bit the precursor to the vibe coding CRM debate, which is raging.
Well, that's really hit the share price, hasn't it, of Salesforce and HubSpot and everybody?
But it's the same problem, albeit you can create a database using vibe coding, but you still need someone who can maintain it. You still need someone who's going to design it.
Who owns that?
Who owns that? The same with a spreadsheet. You've got to have somebody who's designing it, who's then maintaining it. And
well, name check for Yevgeny, who used to work with us and created loads of fantastic stuff for our clients who loved it and were falling over themselves to come and get more of it. The product and the service was great, but you and I had sleepless nights that what happened if poor old Yevgeny goes under a bus or goes and retires one day? Who's owning that? And the client, we kept making sure the clients were aware that they have a liability here to make sure it's well documented and somebody internally knows what's going on. But of course they don't. They just, it's working today. What's the problem? Very short-sighted.
I think that's the problem with it, isn't it? It's whilst it's working, everyone doesn't want to spend the time to think about it. When it goes wrong, then it's too late. Wrong.
I think the other trigger might be someone externally comes in, maybe someone at the board level, new director comes in or a new owner and says, my goodness, what are you doing there?
What are we doing here?
And certainly if you try to sell a company, you'll find out straight away because they'll say, can you show me? Remember we did a couple of acquisitions for clients of small companies. So could you just send us through your CRM or show us your CRM or show us your pipeline?
Show us your pipeline.
And they all sort of shuffle their feet and look down at the
here's
ground.
A spreadsheet that's kind of,
Well, I think John's got a list in his phone. My goodness. So what's it all about then? It's is it just a question of taking the spreadsheet, importing it into your CRM of choice like HubSpot and that's it? That'd work, wouldn't it?
That'd work.
What could possibly go wrong there?
Well, you can do that, but I wouldn't recommend it. I think...
Well, that's part of it. You have to do that, don't you? But that's...
One of the things that we find when we're working with clients that are moving into HubSpot is that it's often a good time to actually reflect on what the sales process actually is. Yeah. Sometimes in a spreadsheet, it's not really been defined that clearly or...
Well, where would you define it?
Well, you'd have to have different stages. It's just an opportunity to think, right, okay, is this now as well, we've got extra functionality that we can put into HubSpot that you don't have in a spreadsheet. How does that then impact how we want to think about art of the possible around what the sales process looks like?
I've seen people with spreadsheets have a different tab for leads, people being negotiated with, if you like, opportunities, and then customers. Yeah. But because they're different tabs, you could, in theory, have the same name on more than one tab. Yeah. I think, well, that's probably not a very good way of doing it. But just like you're saying there, I wonder if anybody ever wrote down the definition of when does it move from one to the other. Yeah. And yet that is really your opportunity, is what you're describing there, isn't it?
Yeah. So if you've got different stages, what are your stages? What's your entry and exit criteria for each of those? Are
you going to qualify leads? If so, how? You're going to ask BANT type questions or medics and Scotsman type questions, or you're just going to have a sense of, they're in our market, they're ICP. Yeah, so you get to challenge the pipeline, the stages, the definitions. What's a lead? How do you deal with inbound leads versus outbound leads? What's your prospecting process? All these questions that you probably haven't properly considered other than in the abstract.
Yeah. So it's almost a start with the end in mind type of approach there. So start with the process, not the data.
So let's say you do that then. So you've realised you need to make the change. You've now thought about the structure you're going to move it into. You've thought about the process.
Yeah.
You've clearly got to bring your existing data across. You're not
Yeah.
going to start from scratch. What's the sort of problems that you've come up with in the past where people have just tried to import what they've got?
Well, it's a tricky one. And again, this is where, not to sort of just harp on about our own processes, but one of the learnings we found is that sometimes you'll find companies say our data's not very good, and it's actually pretty good. Sometimes they say our data's really good, and then you look at it and go, well, there's no email addresses, or there's no domain names on companies, there's
call
no
it good data.
first names, there's huge gaps around segmentation, et cetera, and so you have to do a little bit of work around that to say, well,
old
before
data.
we bring that in, old data.
Even if they're using something like MailChimp, they will have had bounced email lists, but they haven't necessarily brought them across and deleted or marked as bounces.
So before that gets kind of brought in and you pollute a new system,
it's
worth looking at, okay, well, have we got duplicates in here? Have we got we've got gaps in the data? It's an opportunity as well sometimes to think through and say, well, actually, there's some stuff we can do here. We've used AI before to go through and try and categorize segments or revenue size or that type of thing in the data.
Health warning, that will need to be checked by a human, but it's a good
big health warning on that. But
it's a great opportunity. It's a bit like moving house. You empty the loft and you throw out some of the rubbish, and it's a good way of just clearing stuff out, isn't it?
Swedish death clean, or whatever they call it.
Do they?
Don't know if you've heard of that. It's a Swedish death clean. It's what people do in their 60s or something, apparently. They just clear it. Actually, don't leave it for all of your kids to sort out.
Oh, I see.
You clear out all your stuff.
Swedish death clean.
Apparently that's what they call it. At least that's what I've read.
Not a great name, is it?
Well, it's in preparation, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's getting ready to
decluttering.
That's maybe a more
life
British
laundering.
Life laundering.
There, I can get all that stuff. So it's part of the fact that it's a good opportunity to do it anyway.
Yeah, and I think
also you've got to do it, otherwise you're just importing rubbish into your new system.
Well, we did an episode. What was it? 108 on dirty data. Dirty data.
I love that for the 3 episodes after.
3 episodes after.
And then you got a chance to do it again.
Let's do it again. It's an opportunity as well to be a bit ruthless. So if you are, why bother importing? If you've got a list of contacts in there that have been in your spreadsheet or whatever for however long, you're never going to contact them, or you're never going to do whatever. They've just been maybe imported or or brought in from some other campaign or list that someone put together who was an intern or something, or whatever it is. You can cull all that before you bring it into CRM.
Decide if you want to cull it.
And I think
what you want.
The whole point of the dirty data episode 108, was to actually be ruthless about what's actually in your CRM. I think when I went through ours, I culled about 50% of the contacts because I just thought that we're never going to talk to these
people. You can still archive it. It's not lost forever. You save that spreadsheet somewhere, or you could import it into HubSpot as an archived flag, so it's there.
But I see way too many people thinking that importing lots of contacts into HubSpot somehow miraculously means there's going to be loads of work coming out of the end of it.
Yeah, exactly.
But with very little thought around, well, what are we actually doing with these people?
Yeah.
And how would we work them through a funnel? And are they even interested in what we've got to say?
So there's a good lesson there then in, as we said earlier, decide you're going to make the move, come up with a process first to make sure you know what you're moving into, cleanse your data. Then there's the question in your spreadsheet, you'll have had lots of columns with different headings. They won't miraculously all already exist in your CRM of choice. Even HubSpot, which has got a pretty decent starting setup, hasn't it? It's got all the basics, more than just name and address, but it's got loads of other fields, properties as they call them, to move into. But you're bound to have more than that in your spreadsheet. So if you've got more than one spreadsheet, different people are managing, you're going to have all sorts of different naming conventions for those things.
Well, we did a great project on this with a Danish company, Danish manufacturer, and they had gone from... they had sales team all over Europe and UK, and they had everyone working out of Outlook, and then they had a project where they brought everything into a spreadsheet, because that was almost the staging point, and they'd actually worked out a lot of the key segmentation points they needed, etc., into that. Yeah. And then they actually listened to the podcast and then decided they wanted to move into HubSpot, so we helped them do that.
Someone listened to our podcast.
Someone listened to the podcast, but that was an interesting one because there was functionality in HubSpot that was replacing things in the spreadsheet. So you didn't necessarily have to bring it over. So I don't know, I'd say HubSpot's got like a close date that's an automatic field almost, isn't it? And they had a, whatever they want to call it, sale close date or something. So to make it sort of the transition smoother, we brought everything across so that people were familiar. We're almost trying to not replicate, but bring all the fields over so that people were familiar with, okay, I know I put that date in. And so before they got up to date with the system, with HubSpot, they still had a reference to that material. And then 3 months in, once they'd actually started using HubSpot as intended, we removed all those fields.
Yeah.
Or just archived them off, hid them from views.
That's
type
good.
Of thing.
Good way of transitioning it. I think another point that strikes me is that when you're in a spreadsheet, people don't tend to think in database terms, and why would they? They've not been trained in database theory, not the most exciting subject. But as a result, data tables tend to be what they call flat, which is you've got one list. It's got lots of columns on it. So for a contact, you'll have the company, and then maybe you've put the company address and all that sort of thing. That leads to lots of duplication, because if you've got more than one person at the same company, but they've all got a company address next to them, they might all have different versions. So a proper database structure has got different tables, one for the contacts, one for the companies, one for the deals. So whenever you start looking down the column headings in your spreadsheet, you need to work out which table does that belong to. So company address shouldn't really be a contact property. That should exist in the company database. Or like you say, close date. A close date relates to a deal. So that's to be in the deals table, not in the contact. So you've got to think carefully, not just the naming conventions and which ones you want and don't want and all the duplication and nonsense, but where does it live?
And if anyone's tried to do this in a spreadsheet, you just end up with a horrendous amount of VLOOKUPs all over the place to try and bring all that data in. And anyone who's done that will understand why they invented relational databases.
But you don't have to worry about all that. You don't have to be an expert in relational databases. You just have to be aware when you're bringing it in that that's a hang-up from moving from a flat structure in a spreadsheet into a proper system, proper database system. Okay, so you've worked out all the column headings and you've created those that you want to create in your system, those that don't, the custom properties, as HubSpot will call them. Then you've got to start importing. Bit by bit. And there's probably a not necessarily a right and a wrong, but a better and a worse order to do them in. And I've heard it said that you should bring the companies in first, but I'm not a big fan of that.
No.
I would always say bring the contacts in first. Would you go that way, or do you think there's sometimes an argument for the other way around?
Well, I guess it depends slightly on how you've configured HubSpot, but it will create the companies from the contact domain.
I think that's the biggest reason I would say do it that way around. Because like you say, you create the contact, HubSpot will say, oh, that domain name of the email must belong to a company. I'll attach them to that. I'll associate them. Oh, it's not there. I haven't got one of them. And it'll create it. But it doesn't just create it in a very simplistic headline way. It will do quite a bit of work at the background and enrich that data, which is free. It was part of the HubSpot thing. So it'll look up things like their LinkedIn company page, which you can then go and find key people out, their revenue, the number of employees, their proper address, maybe the phone number, a short description of what the business does. So it's probably better than your own company's database.
I think as well then, once you've got the contacts and companies in, and this is when, if you're looking to then bring in your deals and your pipeline data, you've got to make sure that you've mapped your sales process properly, because it might be different in so that you've got it into the right pipeline, you've got it into the right stages, etc. But if you want to associate the right contacts and the right companies to that deal, what you tend to then have to do is export, once you've imported your companies and contacts into HubSpot, is export them back out again. Because then you get the unique ID that HubSpot gives to every contact and company. You can then line those up, and this is where you've got to be really careful with your spreadsheets and don't make sure you get, haven't got a filter on when you
or
add
miss
them
a row
all in
out
or miss a row. But you can add those IDs in, and then when you import your deals, it's going to automatically associate them to the right contacts, the right companies, and then you're kind of flying in HubSpot. If you don't, you've got to go through manually and try and then think, okay, well, this deal here is for, ABC Limited. So, right, who works for ABC Limited? Who's on that deal? Right,
you're doing it all manually.
You're doing it all manually. So that's kind
and
of...
just so that people, if they're not familiar with what we're talking about when we say associating, it's a concept of these tables we talked about. But in real terms, it means that when you go into your HubSpot page and look at a company, you can see on the right-hand side who are the contacts at this company and what are the deals for this company. And vice versa. You can go into the deals and say, right, who's the people, the contacts associated with this deal.
And then you always want to start with a small test batch as well,
Yeah.
rather than just importing, 10,000 deals in or something.
You always learn something on the first one. You realise the dates of input in American formats, or numbers of input in as text, or
dates are really tricky with HubSpot importing out spreadsheets as well.
Or if you've decided that certain free text areas should really be drop downs, like industry or country, then you realise that you're missing one or two, or you've misspelt some. So all that stuff, you realise you've got to go back and have another pass at.
And I think recently HubSpot has made it a lot easier to fix that as you do the import. So you can almost create properties as you import. Yeah, it says
this one's missing, do you want to add it? That's great. Never used to do that, did they?
I think the main point here is that a lot of people think that moving it's just an import, right? How hard is it to import? You click a button, you upload a file, and you push it in. Yeah. Well, you can do that, but you can end up with a real mess if you don't do it properly. Yeah. So it's one of those where a stitch in time saves 9 would be the.
We should have bingo card on these.
Yeah.
So once you've done that, you start to go into some of the more system-based things. Then you got to worry about team permissions, bit of reporting, getting ready for how you're going to launch it. And this is, I think, where in our world we distinguish this first bit, the sort of setup-y bit. We call that activation. And thereafter, where you've got to think more about how do we scale this to more users, that's what we call adoption. Yeah. And it's interesting how different HubSpot partner firms all talk about this differently, but they certainly talk about the difference between onboarding and implementation, for example, as two different things. Turning it on and having one person use it is very different from it then being the system that everybody's comfortable with. And it's that transition, isn't it, between the two?
Yeah, and I think it takes time. If you're trying to change a culture, I think they've done research on this, using like implementing a CRM, implementing something like HubSpot can be a good driver for culture change. I think that happens just by osmosis sometimes, but you can be more intentional about it.
Well, just ask yourself, who owns the data at the moment? If you don't have a CRM, who owns your customers? Yeah. Is it the salespeople? If they were to leave, would they take them with them?
But it can take up to 5 years or so to change a culture, and that's with quite an intentional. And we talked about this, about the leadership styles episode. I think it was 150, was it? Or was it more recently?
He says referring to his list.
He says referring to the list.
Yeah, it was only about 10 ago, wasn't it? The insights profiles one.
Yeah, how your leadership style impacts, culture and the business and things. So, yeah, I think there's got to be realistic kind of guardrails against how long some of this stuff takes.
Yeah, and it needs that leadership from the top. If ever we're engaged by a company and the whole of the CRM implementation is being led by, no disrespect, but someone who's a very enthusiastic sales administrator or a marketing assistant, then you're not going to get that culture change. No. It has to come from board level and ideally chief exec included. So if you were to answer this question very honestly, do you need to have a HubSpot partner to do this? Bearing in mind we are, so clearly, vested interest and all that. Where would you say, rather than saying obviously, oh yes, ring Wellmeadow, get us to do it for you. When are the watch points for a company looking to do this, to go and ask experts to do it with them rather than just have a go? Have a go heroes. We met a few and sometimes it works, right? It's not all bad.
I think some people just want to get familiar with the system before they actually engage with a partner. Yeah. I think it depends on the complexity of your sales process, the complexity of your data. I mean, I was speaking to somebody recently that's probably going to have 300 customers over the next 5 to 10 years because of what they sell. Right. How much hand-holding do you need on that? Yeah. There is still some need for it, but other people are importing huge amounts of data and actually wanting to use this as a catalyst for changing the business. Probably needs a lot more hand-holding and knowledge transfer. And
so if you've got more data or complex data, if you've got lots of users, you've got an unusual process maybe, or even certainly something different to what you're doing now, you're looking to change.
I think a main thing as well is this: no one's stopping their business to implement a CRM, right? So you're trying to change the wheel whilst the car's moving.
That's another bingo.
That's another bingo. Chalk it up. And so that's where actually having a partner is just providing that extra horsepower.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. I think that's the difference in capacity and capability. Yeah. We would like to think we offer both. But if you've got lots of capacity internally, then fine, crack on and do it. You may still suffer from not knowing how to do stuff and you learn the hard way, but you may say, I'd rather do that.
We have got some clients who've got some really good in-house people who've taken to HubSpot like a duck to water. Yep. Chalk that up, another one.
No. And, he's on it. He's on a roll.
And that's great. that's great. You know.
They're easy to work with.
Yeah.
Exactly. We can just help point out some of the things that we've learned from experience, or help speed some stuff up. But you're not in the same teaching mode, are you, as some people who would rather have lots
And I
of
think there's
things
so
done
many
for them.
resources now online, and there's a lot the HubSpot knowledge base. There's lots of YouTube videos. There's lots of things available that can give you a very good head start on all this. But I think sometimes it's the capacity. Sometimes it's we get a lot of people like the cross-fertilization. So we work with a lot of good sales and marketing directors, so they want some of that thinking into their own businesses from a cross-fertilization.
Dashboard design, or what permission sets are relevant or not, or how do you design the process, the pipeline, how do you qualify deals, all that stuff.
So sometimes a partner can be a kind of conduit for some of that cross-fertilization. But
so horses for courses, clearly we're here for those, and there's plenty in our industry that do the same, but it's not essential. It's just advisable, depending on complexity and number of users. Okay, so at some point you might well change. There was an episode we did back in episode 35, which is it time to switch your CRM? So that may be worth a listen back to, just in terms of the broader issues around it.
The annals.
Yes, 35.
No. Sounds
140 episodes
so
ago.
rookie, doesn't it?
I probably still had hair back then.
I didn't.
It wasn't that long ago. Good run around. More focus today on the very specific job of switching from a spreadsheet-based system to a proper CRM like HubSpot or others. Good, thank you.
Cool.
Excellent. Thank you again for listening to another episode of the SME Growth Podcast from Wellmeadow. As ever, if you think that rings a bell or someone you know might appreciate listening to it, please send them on a link to it, tell them all about it, mention it in the pub, or if not, anyway, enjoy your business.